Franz with Cyber Skyline, and we host the National Cyber League competition. We run these episodes for you, so please ask if you have any questions at all, and stick to the end to vote in the poll where we ask for the audience to choose our next topic. This week's topic is the Linux command line basics, so let's just jump straight into it. So as we go into this, you first are probably asking, what is a command line? And simply put, it's just a text-based way to navigate a computer. You're probably very familiar with something to the left here. This is the Windows File Explorer, where if you want to go and navigate different folders and files on your computer, you open this up, and this program provides a graphical way for you to visualize all of the programs that you have, all of the the files, the folders, the images, everything is visualized there. And if you want to run an application, you can click on it, right? And then it will launch the application. The command line interface, the CLI, is just a text-based way to navigate the computer. So what I have here in the screenshot is the Windows command line, and it's different than the Linux command line. I'm just showing you here as a comparison that, like, whatever you do on the command line, you could, there's like an equivalent to do it in the graphical user interface and vice versa. And you can see here that on the left side, we're looking at the C drive, the contents of the C drive, and we actually see the same information on the right side with the command line. We can actually see the games folder, the Google Drive folder, the program files, all those folders and files, they're all there when you use the command line. And really what's happening is that the command line is providing that interface between you and the operating system. And oftentimes we refer to the command line as a shell because there are multiple different types of command line interfaces. The command line itself is a program that is basically interpreting what you're typing in and figuring out what it should do about what you typed in. And so there are multiple different command line interfaces called shells, and the shells are the different programs that are being used to interpret your commands. But it's acting as the intermediary. You are the user, you are wanting to execute a command, you're wanting to do something, you send that information to the shell then communicates with the operating system to figure out how do we actually go about accomplishing what you requested. And in a GUI interface, in the graphical interface, that's the equivalent of you double clicking on a program from Windows Explorer or Finder if you're on an Apple device on Mac. So this is what the command line looks like. I'm going to go over a couple basic commands, and then I'm going to go back and kind of explain what's happening in more detail. And so the first thing that you'll want to know is the ls command. The ls command basically provides a listing of all of the files and directories in your current directory. So if you type in ls here, let's break it down. The left side here, this is the prompt. Basically, this is customizable depending on your shell, but by default, in most circumstances, the left side is going to be your username, and then the @ symbol, and then you'll have the name of your computer. And then after that, you'll get the colon, and then after the colon, that will be the path to the current folder, current directory that you are in. And then that's typically terminated with a $, and then you have a space, and then that's where you get to specify all of the commands that you want to type. And in this instance, we typed in the ls command, we hit enter, the command line interface took our command and interpreted. It says, okay, we want to get a listing of all the files here, and here are the folders that are listed in this current directory that we're in. And you can see that here as the output. After you execute a command, basically two things will happen. Either one, the command will continue running, and so you might have a command which is a little bit more interactive. It'll stay open, and in which case anything that you type will go into that program that you're running, or the program will just terminate. It'll end, and then you get your prompt back. And that's what we're seeing here with the blinking cursor. And these are the two most common terminal shells that you will experience on Linux. I think by default Bash comes installed, but ZSH is another popular shell that people use. Okay, so now that we understand how to actually go and get a directory, to go list what's in a directory, we need to go over the Linux file system. So if you're familiar with Windows, you probably realize that there are a lot of like common folders. Like you'll have a System32 folder. That's where all the Windows operating system files are stored. You'll have a program files folder. You have all these different folders. In Linux, it's the same idea. You have basically these predefined places where things should be in the operating system, and it all starts at the root. And the directory for root is just /. It's just a single slash. That's what is referred to as the root directory. That's the very top of your file system. You can imagine this as a tree with all these branches coming out. So at the very top of the tree is the root directory. Inside the root directory, here are the most common folders directly within there. You don't need to memorize this, but typically, I'll explain a couple here that are the most common that you'll see. One is the /root folder. That is effectively the home directory of the root user. Now, please keep in mind that it's a little bit confusing here. Root can be used in two different ways. Root can be used to refer to the root directory, which is the top level directory in your tree, or it can be used to refer to the root user, which is the admin user on Linux. And so when I'm referring to /root, which is this fourth from the left blue directory here, I'm referring to specifically that is the home directory of the root user, and it is accessible from the root directory as well. So it's /root, and that's the root directory. That's the directory for the root user's home. There's also typically /home. /home is where all of the home directories of all the non-root users typically reside. And so in Windows, you might have a users directory, and this is the equivalent of that. And the rest of the stuff here is not important to know right now, but if you use Linux more, you will probably become more familiar with some of these directories. So there's another thing that we need to cover, which is the concept of absolute and relative file paths. And so this also exists in Windows, although I think most people are probably not familiar with it unless you're a little bit more experienced with Windows. But basically, you can imagine that like if you have a folder inside your home directory that's maybe inside another folder, it can be very long to type out that entire sequence of folders when you want to refer to the current folder that you're in. Or maybe you want to send that directory as input to another computer program, and for you to type out the entire thing, the /home / your username / documents / ABC123, like that's a very long thing to type. And that's why there's this concept of absolute and relative file paths. And so absolute file paths are the full length of what I mentioned there. So if you want to refer to, let's just say you have a folder called ABC in your user's home directory, then the absolute file path to that would be /home / your username / ABC123. It's very long to type out, but that's what an absolute file path is. There's relative file paths as well, which are file paths that are specifically relative to a specific location. Typically, this is going to be your current directory or your home directory. And so I have these shortcuts down here. There is /, so a single dot and a slash, that refers to the current directory that you are in. And then there is also //. So two dots refers to the folder above you. And so if you're currently in your user's home directory, you're in /home / user, and you type in // that refers to specifically the /home/user directory. And if you do dot dot slash, that is specifically referring to the /home directory, right? The user part of that is now omitted because you go up one directory. And then the squiggly, the tilde slash is the home directory. And so for simplicity, if you are like the example I just used there, you were already in the home directory, so there wasn't a need to simplify it more than doing the dot slash. But if you are multiple files, folders deep, and you're far away from the home directory, and you need to refer to something relative to the home directory, you can use tilde slash to go and do that. So the important thing about relative file paths, basically what will happen is when you type these into the command line, it will take these shortcuts and then it will interpret them. It will use the context clues to figure out what the absolute file path is. When you pass these into programs, those programs will take those as input and then they will need to resolve like where that actually is. You need to be very cognizant though when you're using these relative file paths that like you might forget where you are. And so you could accidentally refer to the wrong directory because you forgot your location. And another thing to realize is that if you take a command that uses a relative file path and you pass it to a friend or you get it from a friend and your folder structure is different than their folder structure, or even if it's the same folder structure, you are in the home directory and then they're in a different directory and you're trying to run their command and it's using relative file path, it's not going to work. You will actually need to manually figure out what their relative path was and translate that for your system, right? So we can do an example of that in the demo if people want to see that, but basically just keep in mind that if you're copying a command from someone else and you see like any of these three things, like a dot slash or dot dot slash or tilde slash, it's definitely using a relative file path, and you will want to make sure that it's going to be the same for you or make that modification yourself. And another caveat here is that a lot of times the command line can assume when you refer to a file, if you don't put the dot slash in front of it, or if you're referring to a file or a directory without putting the dot slash in front of it, it will assume that you meant to do that, just as like a convenience thing. And so you might copy a command from someone and it doesn't have the dot slash there because he's using the implicit dot slash, and you are running into issues with relative file paths because of that. So that's important to keep in mind. Now, another thing to keep in mind here is that a single dot at the beginning of a file name indicates that it's a hidden file, right? So without the slash, if it's just a dot and then a file name, that means that it's a hidden file. And so you need to be careful with that as well. And some programs like CD will infer that you mean the current directory even without the forward slash. That's exactly what I was talking about. It will just assume you mean the current directory when you don't. If you don't have the dot slash, it'll just say, oh, it's the dot folder in the current directory, which is itself. So we'll go into more examples of that in the demo. So we went over ls. Now let's talk about cd. So cd means change directory. So we're currently in our home directory. If you remember back here, we talked about the tilde slash being the home directory, right? That's what this this tilde means. Now a lot of times the slashes indicate a folder and they get left off. That's what I was talking about before. So that's why you just see the tilde without the slash, because the slash is implied. So right now we want to change directories. And so what we'll do is we'll type in cd and then a space and then the name of the folder that we want to enter. And you can see here that we're referring to the documents folder, and it's implied that we mean the documents folder in our current directory, because there might be multiple documents folders on your computer, and the computer is just assuming here that when you don't refer to any other file paths, that you are referring to specifically the documents folder in this folder, so that it's not, it's a convenience, so you don't have to type it out all the time. And then you can see after we've typed in CD and then the documents folder, and then we hit enter, now our prompt has changed. And so now you can see it's tilde slash, so that's the home directory, documents. And so this is saying now that we are currently in the documents folder inside the home directory. And this is literally just the equivalent of hitting double click on a folder in Explorer or Finder. And from here, if we run an ls, you can see that our listing has changed. So before, when we ran ls, we could see all of these other folders and documents. And now, because we entered the documents folder, the only thing in here is the lyrics.txt. Now, you probably also want to be able to look at the contents of a file. And the way that you do that is by using the cat command. And cat is short for concatenate. And similar to us entering a directory, entering a folder, we're going to type in the name of the command, that's cat, and then we're going to type the space, right? And then the name of the file that we want to read the contents of. And then what will happen is it will print the contents of that file directly to the terminal as output. And you can see here that there are two lines in this reminders file. And this is the equivalent of just double clicking a text file and reading the contents of it. A cool thing about the cat command is that you can actually chain together multiple different files, and then it will print all of them sequentially together. And so you can see here we did cat space reminders space notes. And so you can see here that in the folder we had a reminders file and we had a notes file. And when we typed in cat space reminders space notes, it printed out the contents of the reminders file and then the contents of the notes file. Now let's break down like what's really happening here. Why do I need to put spaces in here? Basically, when you want to run a program, you start by putting the name of the program first, and then you put a space to separate what are called arguments. And these are basically different like options and settings that you're passing into the program so the program knows what to do. And what will happen is you do spaces to separate them, and what the program will get is a list of the text, and each item in that list is is what you typed into the command line. Every time you separate each argument with a space, that's the new item in its list. And typically this is called argv, like the list of items is called argv, and it's a list starting at 0. So it counts 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the name of the program will always be argv0. And then any of the subsequent things that you put will be sequential from there. argv1, argv2, argv3, argv4. And it'll get these list of items, and then it can figure out, okay, what I'll do is the cat program is looking at it. It's saying, I'm going to take argv1 and everything that comes after that and sequentially print out the contents of those files until I don't have any more things in my list, and then I'm done. And that's what happened here. Now, you might be wondering, well, what happens if I want to send an argument in that has a space inside of it? And if you're going to do that, what you need to do is put double quotes around the item in your list. And even more complicated is that if you want to put a double quote in your item, you like like inside those quotes, like a quote inside your quotes, then you need to put like a backslash in front of those double quotes. That's like more of like a complicated thing that we can go into later if people are interested in that. But these are called escape characters, and it's to make sure that you can distinguish, the command line can distinguish between uh, you trying to like format your input versus like that's actually part of the input itself. Another way that you can specify options is not just through this list here, but also through what are called command line flags. And this is a much more convenient way of doing it. Now, the list of command line arguments, the creator of the program determines what the list should be. Like in this case with cat, um, the author said, "Hey, you are giving me a list of files, and I'm going to open those files. I'm going to print them out." If you if you put in like just text that isn't a file, you'll get an error. And that's the way that it was designed, is that it was intending that you provide all of those files from the command line as arguments like that. But they could have chosen to do it a different way. They could have chosen to use command line flags. And the way that command line flags work is that they basically allow you to label the items in the arguments. So imagine that we had a different program, and let's just say we wanted to combine multiple files together. Let's just say we're making a program, we're combining multiple files together. Um, it's now kind of annoying that you have to remember like specifically that like the order in which you need to specify those files, or maybe you want to also have an option of like um, maybe when I combine my files, I want to be able to specify a separator to indicate the start and end of a new file. And you want to be able to have the user specify what the separator should be, right? So now you have to keep in mind, all right, like you have to put your files at the beginning and then you put the separator at the end, or maybe you put the separator first and the files at the end. It gets really complicated. So instead, command line flags allow you to specifically name and label your options and so that you can the arguments, so that it can be understood and used more easily. And there are two types of command line flags: options and parameters. Options are simply like an option that like just something that you can toggle on or off. It's a setting. And so as an example, I have dash V, which specifically refers to the to turning on verbose mode. And for a lot of programs, that just means that you get more output than you normally would. Maybe it gives you like debug information when you specify dash V versus when you don't specify dash V. Um, so options are specifically things that you can turn on or off. Um, but like by itself. And then like parameters um can be like used to provide additional information to an option, right? So in this example here, I have dash O space and then the file name, a file name that follows it. And this could be used to specifically specify the output of a file. And so I want to specifically turn on the option to output this program to a file. And now I'm going to provide the file name so that that output option knows where to send that data to. And I showed here using like the single hyphen here as the identifier for signaling a flag. But there are both long and short versions of flags. If that's and this is also dependent on the author of the program defining short and long versions of that. But if that's the case, they make short and long versions. You can use either one. Short versions typically start with the single hyphen, like I showed on the previous slide, and long versions have two hyphens. And typically long parameters use an equal sign instead of a space between the actual like option portion and the parameter portion, right? So the option is specifically like the dash whatever or the dash dash whatever, and then the parameter, if there is a parameter, this whole thing is referred to as a parameter now. You have the additional information that follows, or you might just have like a single option here, which does not have additional parameters that follow it. And so you can see here that I have the short flag dash V for verbose mode, or the long flag dash dash V for verbose. I have the short flag here dash O output dash dash output equals output.txt. These are equivalents. And so you can use these interchangeably, asterisks, if the program supports it. And that's, you can try it out. If typically the way that you would find out about these options in the first place is by looking at the manual or by doing a Google search for the options online. And so if you don't know if it exists, just do more searching. Another note here is that it's actually possible in many circumstances to combine multiple short flags together. And so, for example, here, um, if you wanted to use the ls command, the -a option shows you everything, even the hidden files, and the -l option shows it to you in list form. And so you can do the -al option instead of -a-l as a shorthand. And that only works for option, like just single, like on off options. It doesn't work for parameterized things. All right, a couple more of these, and then I promise we'll go into the demo. I'm sure a lot of you are like itching to actually see the real demo. And for those of you who have questions, I'm going to go through, look through all the questions in between going through these slides and doing the actual demo. So next up is the RM command. The RM command lets you remove a file. It's deleting. Now, a very, very important thing. If you're used to deleting on Windows or Mac using the trash bin or the recycle bin or whatever they call it, that typically gives you the opportunity so that if you accidentally download it, you can get it back without too much hassle. That is not the case with the RM command. The RM command is the equivalent to deleting the file and emptying it in the trash. So be very certain that you want to do that. If you RM a file accidentally, it's basically gone, or like you basically need to use some forensic software to go and retrieve it at that point in time. Like there's no easy way for you to get the file back. So be very, very careful with the RM command. You can There are horror stories of people accidentally like destroying their projects, destroying their computer by like accidentally running the RM command on the wrong folder, on the wrong file. And so be very careful with this. But the way that you run it, you're going to type in RM, you're going to type in the name of the file with the space separation, just like how I mentioned with the arguments, they're all space separated. And this will, in this case, this will delete the mixtape ideas.txt file. And if you do the listing again afterwards, you'll notice that poof, it's not in the list. And if you try to print it out, it's also not printing out either. Um, there's no such file directory. It's gone. Now, this lets you delete a single file. If you want to delete a folder, you need to specify a flag, and that is the -r flag. And so you can see right now what we're doing is we're deleting our our ideas folder here, and we specify that doing rm space -r. So that's the -r means recursive. Recursive just means just keep going until the end. And so like we are recursively deleting all the files in ideas. And so if ideas had multiple other folders inside of it, if it had multiple files inside of it, this is the equivalent of like running the rm command on all of those files and all of those folders inside this ideas folder. So that's what the -r is for. You always need -r when you want to delete a folder. And you can see here that -r, specifically the flag, and ideas is the parameter. It's specifically saying we want to recursively delete these files, and we're sending in this ideas folder as the parameter to the recursive flag here. And then now if we do ls, you can see, oh, it's gone. It's all gone. So make sure that you keep in mind that like this is permanent. Don't keep in mind that this will effectively empty out the trash. All right. So next is O Redirection. This is like a very complicated thing for a very simple idea. Basically, it would be really convenient if you could send data to and from programs. And so the way that you do this is through these Linux streams, and there are three standard streams in Linux. And just imagine stream as like a flow of data. You can literally imagine it as like a pipe that connects two things together. Um, there are the three streams are standard in, which is the standard input, standard out, which is the standard output, and standard error, which is std error, which is the standard error. So standard in is the stream that provides data into the program, and standard out is the stream that provides the data out of the program, and standard error is specifically taking the error messages out of the program. So typically, error messages are not put in standard out, they are put in standard error. And so if you send um, data out of the through standard out somewhere else, it won't include the standard error information. Those are two separate streams. So by default, what happens is standard in comes from your keyboard. So if you run a command that takes standard in input, um, you will type in the name of the command, and then it'll expect you to type something, and then you hit like control you just hit enter or control D to like say that, hey, I'm done typing, and then it'll take that and do whatever with it. um, Standard out and standard error also default to the terminal text, and so just print it out on your terminal. However, you can connect them to different programs, or you can send them to different files entirely. So um, let's just say instead of you wanting to type in the input for a program, you want to take the contents of a file and use that as the input into a command. You can do that. Now, keep in mind that some programs may decide to take the file names as arguments into their program. Like you literally type in the file names. Some programs don't allow you to do that. You basically have to send the data in via standard in, and it really depends on the author of that program how they decide they want to handle that. But in terms of output, the same thing could apply. You could specifically have a program that's like, oh, you can use the -o option to specify the output file, or it's just going to print it to the screen by default. It's going to print it to standard out by default, and it's now your responsibility as the person using the program to say, hey, no, actually take that and save it to this file instead. Or alternatively, what you could do is you could take the output of one program and use that as input into another program. And we'll actually go over an example of that in our demo. But just keep in mind that like this idea with the streams, the standard in, standard out, standard error, this is all about like how do I redirect data one way or another. And so there are four different commands, they're called operators, that you can use to do this. So the less than sign, the way that I remember it is that the pointy end points in the direction that you want the data to go. And so the less than sign is used to indicate the file that should be used as standard in. And so in this example, I'm using the grep command, and the grep command is basically a search command. And what we're doing is we're taking the contents of text.txt and we're using it as standard in into the grep program. And then grep will search for hello inside text, the contents of text.txt. That's what that first line does. The second line here with the greater than sign, so now we have echo hello and then greater than text.txt. You can see that the pointy end is pointing towards text.txt. That means that the output of echo hello, which just prints out the text hello, will go into text.txt. And the one thing to keep in mind here is that with the single greater than sign, it is an overwrite command. And so if there's already something in text.txt, it's going to delete it and overwrite it with this new stuff. If you want to append to the file rather than overwriting it, you need to use two greater than signs. And that will do an appending instead of an overwrite. And then the last operator here is the vertical line. It's called the pipe operator. And this takes input from the left side of the command it takes output from the left side of the command and uses it as input into the right side of the command. The command to the right. And so in this case, what we're doing is we are printing out hello, just the text hello, and we're sending that as input into the grep search, and then grep is searching for hello. So it'll just be a perfect match. But we're taking the output from the echo command and we're using that as input into the grep command. But those are the basics of redirection. And we'll go over an example of that now and in the demo. So if you have any questions about that, please let us know. Please let me know so I can cover that in the demo. So right now, we're going to try using the output redirection. And right now we're gonna concatenate our mixtape ideas, mixtape.ideas.txt, and we're gonna use the pipe operator, the vertical line, and we're going to send it to the WC program. That's the word count program. And so it's taking the contents of mixtape ideas.txt and it's using that output, the output of concatenate. So concatenate prints out the name of prints out the contents of the file. We take the contents of the file and we take that output as input into the WC program, and the WC program is going to give us line count. It actually gives us a lot more than that. It actually gives us 3 columns here. The first column is the number of lines in our file, in our input, the number of words in our input, and the number of characters in our input. And so this is basically the equivalent. If you ever use like Microsoft Word, you look at you have to submit an essay, you got to have a line count or word count restriction, or page count restriction. You go and click on like the word count display in the text processor. This is the equivalent of doing that on the command line. But that's using the pipe operator to redirect the standard out from the cat program on the left as the standard in to the word count, the WC program on the right side. So I'm going to take some questions from the chat, and then afterwards we're going to switch into a demo. Ooh, it's a very busy chat today. All right, I'm starting at the top here. I'm gonna do the text chat first, and then I'm gonna go and look at this people who specifically asked the question using Crowdcast. So Deborah's asking, is tilde a shortcut way of saying your user's home directory? Yes, that is correct. The tilde is just specifically saying your user's home directory. If you log in as a different user, the tilde is going to refer to that different user's home directory. Um, okay, Danny's asking, and I'm going to have to go a little bit further back to help answer this question. Danny's asking, is the notes folder is notes inside of a folder called reminders? And the answer to that is no. Those are both separate. They're both separate files in the same folder. So that's all the way here. So here we are getting a listing of our home directory. Inside our home directory, we have a notes file and a reminders file. Those are 2 separate files. Neither of them are folders, so one can't be in the other. But say hypothetically, notes was a folder and reminders was a file. The way that we would check to see if reminders is in the notes folder is if we run ls and then we type in notes, and that will specifically run ls on the notes folder. Or we could go use the cd command to go into the notes folder and then run ls. Both would be the same thing. Kevin's asking, are there any benefits to using the long flags other than knowing exactly what the flag does? That is the benefit. Yeah, you like. There's no other benefit. It's specifically for understandability, especially if you are writing commands that will be sent to someone else and you want to make sure they can understand it, or maybe you are putting it into a program, into a script, and you want to remember it for yourself when you go back and look at it. You want to know what it does. Betty's asking, how do you delete a directory? That's the rm-r. And Mel S is asking, how would I rm multiple files within a directory? So what you could do is you could type in rm and then you could type in each file separately. You type in file 1 space file 2 space file 3, or you can just run the rm command multiple times. You could do rm, the name of the first file, enter, rm, the name of the second file, enter. Both of those will work. Okay. Mel's asking, will we be going over the difference between grep and egrep? Not today. We're actually not really going into grep very much today, but if people are interested in regular expressions and I usually use grep for like very simple text searches, and then every time I need to use a regular expression, I have to use egrep. I think that is the primary difference. But um, yeah, I think that's like the I don't know if there's that's the need for an episode. That's primarily the big difference. All right, and now I'm going to the questions. Tracy's asking, will the slides be made available? Not as a specific file, but this video will be made available. So if you want to go through and rewatch the video, you definitely can do that. It'll be hosted here on Crowdcast. It'll also be uploaded to YouTube as well. Hannah's asking, how does the path variable relate to things? That's a little bit advanced for our discussion today, but basically the gist of it is that when you want to run a program on your computer, so that you don't have to type in the full path to that program, what will typically happen is that uh, people will, when you install the program, a copy of like that program will be installed into a folder, which is included in the path variable. So the path variable is basically a list of folders that your computer will check for installed programs when you try to execute a program. And that prevents you from having to type out the whole like directory like file path to that program. It's a shortcut. So as and I actually I'll show this in the demo, because um, you can actually look up the specific like path to the program that you want to execute, and you don't have to type out the entire path because the folder that that program is inside the path variable. Like I said, it's a little bit outside the scope for today's discussion, but happy to discuss that on a further episode. Danny's asking, what are the common tools that are installed in the command in the Linux command line? What comes already installed by default? Everything I'm going to cover in the demo today comes installed by default. That list of like what are the common tools installed is so long that I don't think I can give it to you very easily today. But everything I cover today is going to be their default. Okay. All right. So time to go into the demo. So I've got here my Kali box, and we're gonna log in. And for convenience, I put a list of all of the commands we're going to run today on the right side, alphabetically sorted with the description of what they do. And if anyone has any questions, please ask me, and I'll cover that as we walk through everything. But on the left side here is our command line terminal. You can see that we're in tilde slash CLI slash parent slash child. So that means that inside our home directory, we have a CLI folder, and inside the CLI folder, we have a parent folder, and inside the parent folder, we have a child folder. So if I want to specifically, this is the relative file path. If I want to get the absolute file path, the very first thing I can do is I can type in the pwd command. This is the print working directory command. I can hit enter, and it will say that this directory is slash home slash Kali slash CLI slash parent slash child. And so Kali here is my username. It's also the name of the computer. So that's why it says Kali, Kali over here. And um, I am not a root user, which is why my home directory is in slash home instead of slash root. So this is where I am currently located. I'm going to open this up so that you can see the equivalent of doing this from the GUI interface. So right now, I have this is the equivalent of like the Windows File Explorer for Linux. I'm currently in the root directory here, and you can see inside the root directory, there is a home folder. And inside the home folder, there's a Kali folder. Inside the Kali folder, there's a CLI folder. Inside the CLI folder, there's a parent folder. Inside the parent folder, there's a child folder. That was very lengthy. You can see why people like using relative file paths, because that's very tedious to go through the entire absolute file path. But that's this is the equivalent, right? I just want to show you that like what we are doing on the left side here is the same thing as what you just saw on the right side with this this Windows I don't know what it's called in here. The equivalent of the file explorer for Kali. So let's start by creating a file. And what I can do is I can do the touch command. This will create a blank file, and I'm going to create a hello.txt file. And you can see immediately on the right side here, graphically, we have a new hello.txt file. And I'm going to confirm that with the command line. I'm going to type in ls, and that'll show us we now have a hello.txt file. The next thing that we should do is we should create a hidden file. And I mentioned this before with the putting the dot in front of the file name. So if I do touch and then I do .hello.txt, this will create a hidden file. And you can see on the right side, it didn't pop up. If I type in ls, there's no .hello.txt. However, if you type in ls and then -a, specifically will show you everything. So when I type, and I'm actually going to do -al because that puts it in list view, I can see here that there is a hello.txt and a .hello.txt. And in addition to that, when you do -a, specifically within every folder, with every single directory, there's a reference to itself, which is this dot, and then there's a reference to its parent, which is this dot dot. And so if I do cd dot, I'm just entering the current folder that I'm already in, so this has no effect. If I do cd dot dot, this will take me up one folder, and now I will switch from the child folder to the parent folder. And that's what just happened right there. I want to actually go back into the child folder though. So I will type in cd and then the name of the file here, the folder, and you can see I can just type in child, and the ends, like, even though that this child folder is technically child slash, the slash is implied. And so if I type in cd child slash, that's the same thing. It's the equivalent of me just typing in cd child. And you can see that here, both of them had the exact same effect. But what I want to show is specifically the ability for us to go and um, make the hidden file here, this hidden hello.txt, visible. So we can specifically type in this command, mv, this is the move command, and then the first option that you provide is the name of the file that you want to move or rename. And so I want to move .hello.txt, and I want to call it visible.txt. And you can see now immediately here, visible.txt shows. If I do an ls, you can specifically see that it's visible again. Now let's go and delete that file that we just created, right? This visible.txt. So we do that using the rm command. So rm visible.txt, this will specifically delete this visible.txt permanently, right? It's not going to go into your trash. It will go straight off, like, straight out of your system. It's completely gone. And if I type this in, you can see, all right, it's gone. It's permanently gone. Now, what I want to show as well is that what you can do, let me create a new .txt. If you delete it using the graphical user interface, you delete it here. I I hit the delete button. There is a trash, and I guess you can see some of my older stuff here from the previous episodes. There is a trash for the graphical user interface, and so if you delete something using the graphical interface, you can get it back pretty easily by going to the trash. But if you delete it from the command line, it's just gone, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, so we've created a hidden file. We renamed it so it's no longer hidden. Let's go ahead and move this hello.txt into the parent folder. We're actually going to move it into a different folder. So let me just do an ls. You can see here we have the hello.txt. We're going to use the mv command. And remember, the mv command is the move command we can use that to rename a file or to actually move a file from one place to another. And so what we'll do is I'm going to actually do two things at once. I'm going to move it and rename it at the same time. And so I'm going to do hello.txt. And also another fun tip, if you type in um, tab when you're specifying a file name, if the computer can infer what file you're talking about, it will autocomplete it for you. So I literally just typed in like HEL and then like tab and then auto completed for me. And you can even see here it's giving me recommendations based on my past history. But I can now go and specifically say, okay, I want to move it from the child to the parent. So I want to go up one folder. I can do dot dot slash. That specifically refers to the parent. And then I want to call it moved.txt. So this is simultaneously actually moving the file and renaming the file in one go. And if I type in enter here, you can see on the right side, it disappeared from the child directory. And if I click parent, there it is. We have our moved.txt. And if I use the command line here, I use my cd, I go into the parent, cd dot dot, and like I said, the slash is always implied. So I can just do cd dot dot without the slash. Now we're in the parent. If I do the ls, I can see there's the child folder we were just in, and there's the moved.txt file. And if we do in pwd, just for the heck of it, you can see that our working directory has changed from all the way back up here, slash home, slash Kali, slash CLI, slash parent, slash child. The child part is no longer there. It's just slash home, slash Kali, slash CLI, slash parent. Cool. So, um, what else can we do? So let's actually practice the IO redirection. Um, the way that we can do this is I use the echo command as a common example. And so let's just say, like right now, if I actually cat out this move.txt, it's blank. There's nothing in there. So let's actually put something in there. So let's say echo hello exclamation, and let's put that in moved.txt. So this is specifically going to take the text hello exclamation and put it into move.txt. And we're doing the grade the single greater than sign. Like I said, I don't remember it as greater than less than. I remember it as like which direction I'm pointing in. The pointy end is pointing to the file, right? So it's taking what's on the left side, the hello exclamation, and it's pointing it at move.txt. So that's where we're putting the data. So, whoops, what I mess up? Did it not like the exclamation? I think it didn't like the exclamation. All right, let's not do the exclamation. I think exclamation triggered something, so we're gonna skip that. And now if I look at move.txt, I run cat, it should say hello, and there's the hello right there. Now let's append to that, right? So let me append hello world. I'm gonna add world to that. Now two greater than signs, the two greater than signs specifically means append instead of overwrite. And then now we'll do that to move.txt. If we print it out again using cat, we should see hello and world. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the echo program by default will add a new line to the end of whatever you type in. So if you don't want that to happen, you actually need to provide the -n option, which says no new line. And let me just show you what that looks like. So I just added two more worlds in there. And so what you should see is a third line with two worlds next to each other. And so if I print it out, I, I'm dumb. I got to put it in the right order. Yep, yep. All right. Apologies for that. The order matters here, right? Remember, the option has to go. The option has to go at the beginning. Uh, and so I'll do this twice or three times now. And now we have world. I managed to confuse it and think that I wanted to print world and dash n, and that's what happened here when I forgot to put the options at the beginning, right? So at the point that we put this dash n here, what followed became a parameter, and as it turns out, echo, if you have multiple different arguments, you have an argv. So this echo would be argv1, this would be argv2, this would be argv3. Any other args afterwards, it will just print it. So that's why you need to put the dash n at the beginning, because it'll just treat it as another thing you want to print if you don't do that. All right, I'm going to take a quick break and answer some questions from the chat. Uh, um, Amel is asking, does MV work on directories? It does. So let me show that very quickly. And we're going to show how to make a directory. So to make a directory, it's mkdir. That's line 7 here on my references. And I'm going to say new test folder. So I created my new test folder. You can see that over here. And then I will use mv test folder and call it renamed folder. And now you can see that it switched from test folder to renamed folder. Nicole is asking, how would you use echo for multiple lines of text? Deborah responded by saying you can do like a it's called the new line character. It's /n. It's a little bit more complicated than what I want to cover for today, but there are these special characters which allow you to like identify those types of things directly in the command line. How I assume TW is Tally is asking, how do you make a new line of text before the existing line of text in a file? There's not an easy way to do that using input output like the IO redirection. What you could do, it's a little bit of like a roundabout way of doing it, is you can create two different files and then you can use the cat command to reorder the files and create a new file. So let me show that very quickly. So I'm going to create a uh, I'm gonna create a file and I'm gonna say, okay, first, let's call this last line is going to be last line is going to be the contents of this file, and we're going to save it to, let's just say lines.txt, and then I'm going to also create a first line, and I'm going to save that to first.txt. So let's say right now we have this lines.txt, and we want to edit lines.txt so that the first line is in front of the last line. Currently, it's just the last line in there. We could do cat first, then lines, and hopefully I don't mess anything up terribly if I do this. But what this is saying is print out the first.txt, then print out last.txt, and then send that all into lines.txt. I hope this works because I might be messing with something trying to like take the input and save it at the same time. Yeah, I didn't like that. Cool. So let's just do out.txt. Um, but if sorry, I cheated there. I clicked from the GUI. If I print out.txt now, you can see, oh, did I mess something up? I messed something up. All right, echo first line, echo last line, and then first lines out.txt. There it is. First line, last line. I think it actually like executed the program and just gave me a warning. I think it actually did it. Which is why when I printed it out, it like looked this way. Um, but yes, that's how I would do it. I got another question. What is echo? Echo repeats the input text to standard out. So it literally just prints whatever you have to the screen, or if you redirect it, it'll put it elsewhere. Eric is asking if there's time, can you cover UMask versus Chmod in relation to when to use which for permissions? Okay, that's definitely like a more advanced Linux command line topic. So that is something we'll save for a future episode. Nicole is asking, what version of Kali Linux are you using? That's a good question. Let's see, LSB release. Oop, nope. All right, I forget how to check it. I'm using the latest version of Kali. Like it, I downloaded it from the website a couple months ago, so it's latest version. All right. Okay. I have a couple more, and I think we're gonna call it for a day because we're getting to the top of the hour. After I cover a couple more things, I just want to show the input output redirection live with word count. But if you all have any final questions, oh, there's a new version of Kali released just today. Okay, well then I'm one version old. Um, uh, but yeah, I will cover the input output redirection, and as I'm doing that, I'm gonna put up a poll for what topic you'd like for us to cover next time. So right now our options are how does DNS work, how to use ZenMap, how to solve the Pandora challenge from the network traffic analysis section of the gym, and more Linux command line because it seems like you all are interested in that. Okay, so let's go and actually get a line count on something. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you quickly how to use a text editor from the command line. Um, this is the text editor I'm going to use is called Nano. Nano is like the very basic like learner's command line editor. People typically use Vim or Emacs as like their standard one when they get more familiar with it. But Nano is just very simple, so that's what I'm going to show today. And the way that Nano works is that you type in Nano and you type in the name of the file. So let's call this let's just go edit lines.txt. All right, so we have our lines here, and this is just like you could just type however you normally type, and then enter whatnot, like use the arrow keys to get around. So this is just like standard, like you type it, it shows up here, and at the bottom here you can see these commands, these shortcut commands for different operations. And so the main thing that you probably want to know how to do is just how to exit and save the file. So I'm going to type in this is a test, hello world, and last line. That's what we had here previously. So the this like up the caret here, that means the control key. And so this control X this is control X for exit. So I'm going to type in control X. It's going to ask, do I want to save it? And I type in Y for yes, N for no, and then control C for cancel. So I'm going to type in Y for yes, and then it says, what do you want to name it? Lines.txt works for me, so I'm just going to hit enter. And so now if I print out lines.txt, I have this is a test, hello world, and last line. And so now we actually have a file with some contents in here. And so I can cat lines.txt, and by default, standard out is the terminal. It's printing it out on the screen, but I don't want to print it on the screen. What I want to do is I want to take the output of cat lines.txt, and I want to send that as input to word count, WC. And then if I do that and I hit enter, I get my three different stats here. So the first stat is the line count, the second stat is the word count, and the third stat is the character count. And you can actually see here, this is 3 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 characters. And I'm not going to count that out, but it's 38 characters. Sorry, this is 8 words, and this is 38 characters. So that's how you do the input output redirection. One final one to leave you with, the cp command is the copy command. And so if I have my lines.txt, I want to create a lines2.txt, you literally just say cp, the first argument is the file that you want to copy, the second argument is the name of the file that you want to create as the copy. And so I can type that in here and I can see I have my lines.txt and my lines2.txt. So I'm going to go through and answer any final questions, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, so it looks like two things in the chat. New topic suggestion: how to use Burp Suite. Um, all right, I'll add that to the poll for next episode. And then a question about how to use Vi. So that will come in if the more Linux command line wins, that will come in there. I'll put how to use Vi in there, as will I do the permission controls on files. I can add that in there as well. But currently we have a tie for solving Pandora from the gym and more Linux command line. But I appreciate you all joining us today. Please make sure, if you're not already signed up for the National Cyber League, go register for it today. If you got any friends who haven't signed up yet, the gym's available right now. They're missing out on precious practice time if they're not doing the gym. And as you can see, like a lot of the things that we do in the episodes here, very, very relevant, very, very helpful for you going through the gym and in the games itself. So, please sign up for NCL. Please do the gym. If you have any friends that haven't signed up yet, please ask them to sign up. But with that, I will wrap up for today. Our next episode, I'll actually give you all a heads up this time around. Our next episode for this will be on the, let me see here. It will be on the 30th, September 30th. So next Thursday on the 23rd, we're actually having a joint webinar with CrowdStrike. So if you all are interested in a job or an internship at CrowdStrike, definitely check that out. We sent an email out about that last week to sign up. We'll send another one out shortly. But check that out if you're interested in an internship or a job. And then next Thursday, we will come back with another episode of NCL Live. So thank you all for joining us. If you want to watch the replay, just stick along. The replay will be made available on Crowdcast immediately when we're done, or you can find it on YouTube in like a day or so when we re-upload it there. So thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.